Welcome back to the channel, y'all. So, probably already watched. If you haven't watched my intro to my new to me yellow 88 Fiero GT, if you had, you would have caught the story about how what happened with the alternator driving it home. But needless to say, the car has a seized up alternator. So today, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be changing out the alternator on this 88 Fiero GT with a 100. Now these came with about 100 amp alternator from the factory, which better than Mustangs in the same era for sure. But I'm upgrading it to 140 amp from a place called the Fiero Store. If you are into Fieros, you should know this place by now. But it's a little bit different being that it's an 88 because it's a 1 year only alternator. The only main differences are the connectors are different. Not that big a deal. You can figure it out. But it's a pretty simple job. If you watched my intro video on this car, you probably saw pictures that I put in there of me trying to figure out what's wrong with the alternator in a hotel parking lot. And which point I basically, if I had an alternator swap out, I could have, because I actually pulled the alternator out in a hotel parking lot with some very minor tools. I spent about 40 bucks in tools at O'Reilly's on the fly, using the jack and lug wrench that comes with the car. Was able to do it. So yeah, anyway, trying to get back in the swing of things, but needless to say, stay tuned, because I'm going to try and cover this and give you the basic ins and outs of it. So hang on. Okay, so this is actually a pretty simple process. There's only two 13 millimeter, I believe, if I remember right, bolts holding the alternator to the bracket. There's a 10 millimeter nut holding the power wire on, and then of course you got this connector. And so how you tension this is they actually use a 19, you can use like a 19 millimeter wrench, if I remember right. And you basically pull on the alternator, because the tensioner bolt is the lower bolt that holds the alternator in. So there's not actually a serpentine belt tensioner on this car. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and disconnect your battery with an 8 millimeter wrench. I believe that's right. Try to do things one-handed. Let me just see if that fits. Yeah. So it's an 8 millimeter wrench for the battery posts. I believe it's a 10 millimeter for the power wire. And then I'm going to unhook this connector. So let me do that real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, once you get the power wires disconnected from the alternator, before you jack the car up, and I'll cover that in a minute, I recommend taking a longer ratchet or wrench and loosening the top bolt for the alternator. Since you're taking it out, you might as well go ahead and just take it out while you're up here, because you're going to jack the car up and it'll just make it that much harder to reach. So let me work on this and I'll be back. All right, now that that's all done, I'm gonna get all these, get the lug nuts busted loose. These have obviously the lug nut covers. No big deal there. Get these off. Now, you don't necessarily have to bust the lug nuts loose on this because before you jack it up, because it is a drive wheel, so you can just put it in gear and put the parking brake on if your parking brake still works, and do it that way. However, I'm used to doing it this way because it's just about, you know, it's just one. If you do it the same way for all four wheels, then it's the same way all the time. Which, you know, your front wheels, you're gonna have to do this. Just as you can see, I probably should put the parking brake on, but it won't matter in just a second. Alright. Next thing I'm going to do is jack up the rear end of the car. I'm going to jack it up by the cradle. Because this has the Design 1 exhaust, or Miller Woods turbo exhaust, it's kind of hard to see the cradle, but I'll show you another spot you could jack it up by so you avoid crushing the coolant tubes. And I don't really like how that's hitting, so I'm going to lower it back down, bring it back up. All right. You don't even have to jack it up that high, you just got to get enough to get the wheel off the ground and out the way. So. You could probably honestly do this without taking the wheel off, but it makes it so much easier. It's just worth the extra 3 minutes it takes to do this. You gotta jack the car up anyway to get up under there. There's no sense fighting it. Just slug nuts always a pain. There we go. Okay, wheels off. Now let me show you what we're looking at. So up under here, what you're looking at, boy, this doesn't look good at all. Okay, you see the alternator where the wires are hanging down from. Right here is your bottom bolt. It's another 13 millimeter. Once I take this loose, the alternator will pretty much fall right out. And then, I mean, it won't fall right out because it's kind of got a tension on where the upper bolt goes, but the belt should start coming loose, and then I should be able to wiggle it out. So it's not a really good angle on this, so I'm just going to let y'all kind of, Actually, you know what? Since I can't really get a good angle on it, you see what I'm doing? It's a 13mm bolt. I'm just going to work that loose and wiggle that alternator out. So I'll be back. All right, so it's actually several days later. I got busy, had a lot of things to do, and I've been gone for work again. So before you get to installing the new alternator, one thing you're going to have to do is notice that the Fiero factory pulley, Fiero factory system is a 5-rib serpentine belt. Well, the pulley that comes on the alternator is a 6-rib. So what you're going to have to do is swap the pulleys out. 24mm socket is what I used on an impact. Doesn't take a whole lot. You'll have to hold the pulley and then zip it off. I already zipped that one off so I can show y'all. But basically, just going to hold it like this. Pull that pulley off, and I'm actually going to use the new nut since that's on that stud. Zip this one on. That's a little tight. Alright, so once you do that, as you can see, this is pretty tight on there. It's actually rubbing. That tells me it's too tight. The blades in the cooling are, so probably need to set this up so that it, as you can see, you can hear it, right? It shouldn't do that. In fact, I'm gonna bet this needs a, aha, figured out the problem. So I need to, there's a spacer that was on the shaft for the factory pulley. Take that, put it in there. See, we even make a mistake here and there. You see, it kind of doesn't sound good. So, makes me wonder. Well, we're gonna try it anyway. Let's see. Looks like kind of bent blade somewhere, so I'm gonna have to figure out which blade is rubbing where. Just rubbed right there, so looks like this blade right here. I'm gonna try to bend it out just a little. I'm gonna have to bend this one single blade out just a little bit. Anyway, once I get that done, I'll be back. So I just pried out a little bit with the pair of dikes. As you can see, it's not rubbing anymore. So that will move forward. One thing you're gonna need that this comes with that the factory one does not is go ahead and figure out a way to upgrade your power and ground wires, because this does put out more and it could possibly melt your wiring. So what I did is I went and got some battery connection cables. I just guesstimated. I may have to go get different ones, but in fact these are going to probably require washers just to make connection. But basically you need bigger, thicker power and ground wires in order to handle the load, the extra amperage that this alternator is going to put out. This one's probably going to be too long, but it's okay. So these will go roughly right here, and I will run this wire, the positive, to the power distribution point below the C500 connector down here, and I will find a good grounding spot to run the ground wire. And I haven't gotten under there to really look to see. I may just run it up to the shock tower if I can, or something like that. But anyway, I'm gonna get that all sorted out and I'll be back. Okay, so got the ground strap tightened up. No big deal there. The positive will go there along. I'm gonna go ahead and use it in conjunction with the factory wiring. And then you got your pigtail connector right there. So all that's left for me to do is to put this up into place, and then we'll go from there. So stay tuned. Okay, it's up in there. The bottom bolt I've just got placed in there just to keep it from falling. Next up, we will see how the bottom or the top is lined up. I don't think it is. Yeah. This is the part that's kind of tricky because you got to play a guessing game. Looks like it needs to come forward. It's wanting to bite. So basically you got to get this lined up so that the bolt will go all the way through. I'm going to fiddle with that. I'm going to get a dowel punch and try to move it back and forth, and then I will be back. Okay, as you can see, I got the top bolt going. It's giving me a lot of fits, but we'll get to that. So what's left? I got to get all the wiring hooked up, get the belt on and tight. I'll probably do the belt first so I know where it's routing before I run the wires. And then, yeah, so to do the belt, I ain't got a new belt. Let's see. It's a little bit shorter than what the factory calls for, but it's a belt that's easily in stock and shouldn't be too hard to swap out. It's actually what I was able to get when we were stuck. It's just a little bit shorter, so the tensioner there, but there's plenty of room on the tensioner for it to fit. So basically, get this belt up in here. You can go from the top or the bottom, but I'm gonna go from the bottom just because that's how I like to do it. So the trick is getting it past all this stuff while and getting it over the alternator, because the alternator is kind of tight in between the shock tower and it. And just making sure it all lines up. And I've actually got to loosen it. I had the bottom bolt on the alternator tight to hold it still while I tighten the top, run the top bolt up. Of course, now it's not going to go on there. But so anyway, I have to find my wrench. It's a little tight on there, so get the wrench. It goes. Let's see if y'all can see where I'm pointing. Right. The wrench will go right there, on and basically the square of the wrench to use to tighten and loosen. And I'm gonna have to loosen it up, so bring it in first before I actually tighten it up, because there's not enough room right now for the belt to go on. So let me get the wrench and I'll be okay. As you can see, the belt is in, it's tight. It took a little extra persuasion with the driver and a hammer, but it's in. So next, I'll hook up the pigtail real quick. Gotta hook up the positive wires. I'm gonna run this ground right here. I gotta get that off, run it, do that last. I get the positive wire, which is actually right. I don't even know if you can see that. It's hard to show because it's so cramped in here and the exhaust is right in the way, but the light is not getting through. But right here is the positive. So I'm gonna run that, and then I'll do negative, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. So, hang on. Okay, looking under here, you can kind of see I ran my ground strap over here to the block. Got the pigtail hooked up, got the positive wire wired in, I went and flipped it to the bottom side, just because of the wire routing, made it easier. Next, I'm gonna be routing this positive cable up and out of the way to the power distribution center. So when I get done routing that, I'll be back. All right, let's see if I can show you here. Got the battery out of the way to demonstrate, but got this. Got the positive wire ran up around here along the shock tower and tied into the power distribution block on the near the C500 connector. Alright, so now I just gotta get the battery back in and we'll see if we can get some juice out of this thing. Well, as you can see, I took my shirt off because I didn't want to get seats dirty because I've been crawling on the ground. The car is extremely loud with that exhaust, but as you can see, I'm cranking out awesome voltage according to the gauge, which she's idling up because it's cold, but I'm going to test the voltage real quick. Let's see what we get. Can't show that without dropping the leads, but we're getting about 14.6, so pretty good at idle, especially since I just started it. So basically that's going to be a wrap on this one. I just got to get the wheel on it, get it back on the ground, and things should be good to go. So stay tuned until next time. As always, I'll be back.